Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, as well as on Twitter and on Instagram. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. It's great to be with you on this Monday. I apologize for that slight delay. We were dealing with some connection issues. Want to make sure those were good on the front end before we start the show, as opposed to starting it. Then the connection goes haywire, and then we're just trying to keep up the rest of the show. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. Feel free to chime in the comment section. We got a ton to talk about, baby. Our NBA Finals is set. Indiana out of the Eastern Conference, Oklahoma City out of the Western Conference. Some breakdown for that finals coming up at the end of the show, including my prediction for these finals. I must admit, my history predicting finals is very similar to my history predicting Super Bowls. It's not good. Hopefully I can turn that around starting tonight at around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So stay tuned till the top of the hour where I get into my finals prediction. Also get into the Inside the NBA crew, the TNT crew, signed off for its final broadcast Saturday night. I'm going to pay tribute to Inside the NBA, which will continue, thank goodness. Sort of a brief take, because there was a discussion about what Inside the NBA will be on ESPN. I think it's a little bit overblown. Touch on that later. And Bryson's Best 10 is back. My top 10 members, in my mind, in the history of the NBA on TNT. 1 to 10, we'll rank them. Get to that toward the end of the actually in about 45 minutes from now. A topic no one's really talking about. Frank Ragnow, the center for the Lions. Bet you never heard me say that name on the show before, huh? Well, he retired today. It's a devastating loss for Detroit, a Lions team that I've been very, very fond of over the years. I'll get into that toward the middle of the show, what the Knicks need to do in order to put themselves in title contention, or at least they're certainly in title contention, to get beyond how they got where they got this year. Get to that in about 10 minutes or so. But first, Pacers are going to their second NBA Finals in their franchise history. The first time they've gone in 25 years. They went there in 2000, lost to the Lakers in what was the first of the Shaq and Kobe three-peat. So they win Game 6 on Saturday night, 125-108, in a game that was tight in the first half. Pacers led by 4 going to the locker room, blew the doors open in the third quarter, and just kind of continued that pace throughout the rest of the fourth quarter to win this basketball game. Again, we'll touch on the Knicks side in about 8 to 10 minutes or so. But for the Pacers, the victors in this instance, the thing that I found incredible and what I respect so much about Indiana is and I've joked throughout these playoffs, they play to their team name. They make you play their pace. And if you don't, well, really, you can't play it as well as they can. And if you don't play it at all, styles make fights. They're just going to find a way to beat you more times than not. Is that this is a team that wears the opposition down. That was the best offense in the NBA, certainly of the second half of the season since January 1st. They've got the second best record in the NBA to the Oklahoma City Thunder. You talk about a squad with Tyrese Haliburton, who, again, the discussion coming into these playoffs, overrated, underrated, all of it. Well, I think he proved, and I talked about this after his masterpiece in Game 4, he's an underrated basketball player because he gives you what you need. Again, a shooting efficiency, he's not quite there yet. He does need to refine his offensive game a little bit. He is in year 5. It's not like this is going to be stagnant for the rest of his NBA career. But they've got depth. And the thing that I've noticed throughout this series, and particularly in Game 6, that I found incredibly easy to root for this Pacers team, man, when it comes time to do so, they can lock you up. Andrew Nembhard, who I loved out of the draft a few years ago, my buddy Mike Guido can attest to that. We've done draft shows. We're going to do another one this summer in about a month or so, or actually a few weeks or so for the 2025 draft. Love Andrew Nembhard coming out of college. He was outstanding against Jalen Brunson. So Brunson, again, in this game, not efficient shooting, but the numbers are awful. He's 8 for 18, 2 for 7 from 3, 19 points. It was the fact that Nembhard, primarily guarding Brunson and picking him up full court, not scare of the moment. You talk about a guy in Andrew Nembhard who had 6 steals in this basketball game. 6 steals in a closeout game at home. Held the Knicks to 108 after the Knicks had trounced Indiana the previous game by dropping 111, and obviously a more balanced game for New York. So listen, they have a championship coach, Rick Carlisle. This is a team that's going to be more than capable of competing with Oklahoma City. You'll see my prediction at the end of today's show. I'll say this in the front end. I'm not buying necessarily that this is just going to be this stomp fest. This could be a sweep, a 5-game contest in favor of the Thunder, and that the Pacers are just outmatched. I think we kind of made that mistake multiple times throughout these playoffs where I made the idiotic move. I said the next Monday on the show after the weekend the playoffs started, I said I regretted my pick after the first game, picking Milwaukee over Indiana. I'm like, what What was I thinking? I know Giannis is awesome. He's far and away the best player in the series. And Indiana has like the next 5 best players after that. Like it's the depth. I was like, what was I thinking? Pacers ended up winning that in 5 games, the Dame injury, all of it. Go to Cleveland, number 1 overall seed in the Eastern Conference, 64 wins. I picked the Pacers on the front end because the Cavs were beat up. I thought the Cavs were a regular season basketball team, and they did an outstanding job of containing Donovan Mitchell. He had a big series, but containing the ancillary pieces for Cleveland, and they ended up closing them out in Cleveland. 0-3 were the Cavs against the Indiana Pacers. And then they take out the Knicks in this 6-game series, which was tight through the first 5. And then in game 6, Indiana kind of asserted their dominance and made the Knicks play to their pace. It's like when the Knicks slowed things down. And again, I'll get to New York. I feel like folks are overreacting a little bit to how the Knicks style play works because, I don't know, it was a close series, but they knocked out Detroit, an up-and-coming team with Cade Cunningham, and they helped them knock off the defending champs. When Jason Tatum was healthy throughout the course of that series, they just ran into a better basketball team and a team that plays in the modern way when it comes to, yes, they shoot threes, but I think they're in like the bottom half of the NBA in terms of 3-point attempts. Like they're not just going to come in like the Celtics or come in like the Rockets with James Harden and shoot 50 threes just for the heck of it, just because that's part of the game plan. They let the game come to them, and that's what I love about Haliburton. If it's his offensive game, like it was in game 4, he'll drop 35 in your head. If it's Pascal Siakam, and again, we'll get into why I thought Haliburton should have gotten the conference finals MVP over Siakam, but there's no question about it. Both those guys are outstanding. Siakam can give you 30 or 40 points any given night in the postseason. Okay, you had, what's my man's name? Mathurin, who can give you a punch off the bench. Miles Turner can be a good two-way player, can be a good sort of 8 points, 13 boards, 3 blocks guy. True big man in the NBA. And you see a little bit with Indiana what you saw with Oklahoma City. I talked about this on Friday. The video actually just got uploaded about an hour ago on the YouTube channel, so feel free to check it out, where the Thunder do construct their roster. Sam Presti, who's a great GM, they constructed their roster in the way that, like it or not, and I'm not crazy about it, but you kind of have to in today's modern NBA CBA, where it's you got your superstar, and I think it's fair to say, folks, at this point, you lead your team to the finals. You are a superstar, Tyrese Haliburton. You've got your superstar. You're going to have your number 2 guy, Siakam, and then Jalen Williams. That'll be a fun sort of back and forth to see between those two. A champion, young player, first-time All-Star. And then we're just going to load the roster with what fits around the number 1 guy. And we're obviously going to have a great coach, Carlisle, Dagnall. That's going to be a fun sort of chat. Again, Carlisle's got title experience. Dagnall, not so much, but Dagnall's a great coach. So the matchup's going to be fun to watch. But again, Indiana, Oklahoma City, I saw a stat where they're like, neither played a dime into luxury tax, second apron. That's not even an issue for either of those squads. I mean, the biggest decision for Indiana, do we keep Miles Turner? Which the irony, and I shout out to Miles Turner, I'll say this, it felt like around 2019 to about, I'd say as recently as 2023, it felt like he was like the big fish in the trade market that the Lakers were going after and other teams were going after the last few seasons. And Indiana said, nope. We like him. We think we can win with him as a part of what we're trying to build here. And that's what we got. So shout out to the Indiana Pacers. Quickly on the conference finals MVP, because I don't want to spend too much time on it. If it were finals MVP, I'd feel differently, because that's to me like a legacy defining type of award. Is that, listen, nothing against Pascal Siakam, who in game 6, we can pull up his numbers here in game 6. Hang on just a second, was fantastic. Gave you 31 points, 5 rebounds. Haliburton should have gotten conference finals MVP. So we can show you sort of the side-by-side between these two guys. And it's close. Again, Siakam beats Haliburton by 3 points in terms of points per game. Field goal percentage, 7% better than Haliburton. That'll work. And then 3-point percentage exponentially better than Haliburton. 50%, 32%, that'll work. The Haliburton, if we're just sticking to the shooting, was 14% better from the free throw line at 81, nearly 82%. Still averaged 21 a game, gave you 10.5 assists, actually beat Siakam in rebounds 6-5, and averaged 2.5 steals a game. And to me, what any series MVP comes down to, yes, the numbers have to matter, but what are the moments? And nothing against Siakam, but I do think there was an element of, okay, Haliburton literally had the most iconic moment of the series in the first game, in the Reggie Miller iconic choke moment when he thought he hit the game-winning 3 on like Kawhi Leonard style, shoots the shot, bounce up, falls in, shooter's touch, sends that to overtime, Pacers win. And then he had the best overall game of the series in game 4 when he had the 30-point triple-double with no turnovers. So respect to Siakam, but I think an element that I struggle to give him the conference finals MVP for, if I can just pull this up here, in that game 5, rather game 6. Do we have this on my phone? I thought I saved it. Yeah, here we go. Kind of inconsistent in this series. 17 points, 39 points, 17 points, 30 points, 15 points, 31 points. I mean, I'm going to start calling him even game Siakam. I mean, that's kind of what he's become. Really, I guess game 1 of the 19 finals would disprove that with what he did to my Warriors, but it's nothing against Pascal. I mean, this is a guy, again, who's a champion in 2019 with the Raptors, was the second best player on that team. There was maybe a case he was finals MVP in 19. I actually would have given it to Kyle Lowry. Either way, he has experience. He's an all-star, and he's your number 2 scoring pop, in the starting lineup who can give you 30 at a moment's notice. So how he's going to be able to get that scoring against the Oklahoma City defense will be fun to watch. But again, to me, series MVPs, if it's tight, if the numbers are relatively close, which in this instance, Siakam to Haliburton, they are, to me, you got to then give it to the guy who had the most iconic moments from the series. The game-tying shot and the Reggie Miller choke in game 1, and then game 4, the 30-point triple-double with goose egg turnovers. So shout out to the Pacers, more than worthy Eastern Conference champion. Shout out to my guy, Patrick Brown, who's from Indiana. He's a Lakers fan, but he had said all playoffs long, like, there's a 50-win team in the Eastern Conference. We're not paying attention to them. We're just talking about the Celtics and the Cavs and, the Knicks are a fun. There's a team in Indiana that's playing really good basketball. Watch out for these guys. And shout out to Tyrese Haliburton. Shout out to Pops Haliburton, who's in the building. He'll be there for the finals. I don't imagine courtside. I don't want to see him get into a nose to nose with SGA, but nonetheless, that's what we have. So Pacers and Oklahoma City Thunder finals, not the one we thought we would get necessarily, not the one that NBA fans, unless you're a Thunder or Pacers fan, were just clamoring to see. But at the end of the day, it's an interesting series. I mean, again, style of play. We'll show you more of the numbers at the top of the next hour when I do my prediction for the series, but it's going to be a better finals than you think. Let's put it that way. That's what I'll throw out there. So to the losing team in this, the New York Knicks. So listen, to me, I don't think if you're a Knicks fan, you have been through, to put it mildly, a lot of pain over the course of your life, unless you're alive to see that 1973 title, which was the last time the Knicks were NBA champions 52 years ago. You've seen a lot of heartbreak. To me, the season in and of itself has to be regarded as a resounding success for the Knicks. When you consider the fact they lose in the second round last year to these Pacers in 7 games, but the team got beat up. Brunson went on a run, particularly in that Philly series before that was unlike anything I've seen from a small player outside of Steph Curry in a playoff series. But they reconstruct the roster. They said, we're willing to give up multiple first-round picks to get Mikal Bridges, even if most of the NBA world sees that as an overpay. Bridges has played with heart and Brunson in college, the Villanova connection, and Mikal Bridges, as I've called him on the show, he's the Iron Man of the NBA. He doesn't miss games. He's a great defender, can give you 15 points. He's a really valuable player, winning basketball player. I liked the addition. And then they said, we're going to take a big swing. We're going to get Karl-Anthony Towns from the Timberwolves. And at that point, folks like myself are like, oh, they got to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. They should be able to fight with Boston. As it turned out, they did go to the Eastern Conference Finals through Boston, as opposed to facing them the way that I, at points, felt that would be the case. But the season plays out. Yes, they win 50 games. They kind of replicate what they did a season ago in terms of the win column. But they were bad against winning teams this year. They were bad against Boston, and they were bad against Cleveland, and they couldn't win games against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and could not quite get over the hump against the good teams in the NBA. So at that point, I'm like, they'll beat Detroit. They're better than Detroit. It'll be kind of a close series, and then Boston's going to wax them. Dead wrong on that front. They ended up in Game 6 waxing the Celtics in that matchup. Now, that was after the Tatum injuries, but still coming back from the 20-point deficits in Games 1 and 2, winning the close Game 4 when Brunson was phenomenal. I think at this point, if you're the Knicks, the discussion right now for this team has been, what do you do with the Brunson-Cat tandem? Is this something that can work moving forward to be a championship contender? Or really, you're a contender now. You were 2 wins away from the finals to get over the top. Here's what I struggle with. So Brunson and Cat on the floor together, I've got this in my notes here, where the Knicks, when Brunson and Cat were on the floor, had a defensive rating of 120. Now, just to put that into context, that's 3 points worse than the worst defensive rating team in the NBA, the Utah Jazz, who obviously were tanking. Jazz had a rating of 117. Knicks in the series, Brunson, Cat on the floor, had a rating of 120. I think it is worth the fact, since you got to your first conference finals in a quarter century, you're really in championship contention for the first time in that span as well. It's worth giving it another year. Cat is who he is. Cat is going to give you 24 points. He's a 24-point double-double machine. Not a great defender. You would like to see him lock in that more on the floor. But a lot of throughout this series, listen, some of the fact that the Pacers scored as many points that is because they are the best offense in the NBA. Some of that is that. Some of that is the fact that they dictated the pace throughout the course of the series. And some of that is the Knicks were exhausted. And that sort of goes into my next point. Can we show this season how fatigue killed the Knicks? These are the 5 best players in the Knicks. So I've got it right here. So in no particular order, obviously, but Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, Brunson, Cat. Go and put up the graphic. 1st, 3rd, 6th, 14th, and 20th in minutes per game in the NBA this season. Like, Josh Hart's a really good hustle player, good culture guy, and you need him. You need guys like Josh Hart to win championships in the NBA. Why in God's name is he first in minutes? Why is Mikal Bridges, who already doesn't miss a game in and of itself, like has not missed a game his entire career? True story. Why is he 3rd in minutes per game? Why is he 3rd in the NBA? Anunoby, 6th. Brunson, 14th. Cat, 20. Cat, 20th is... Brunson at 14th is actually, for me, it feels kind of low, actually, just based on usage rate and whatever. And Cat at 20th feels about right, based on his role in the offense and his role in the basketball team. But let's go to another graphic, just showcasing how tired the Knicks were over the course of the series. Last in bench points per game. Last in bench minutes per game. 18th. Minus 37 this season. In fourth quarter point differential. That's despite having the clutch player of the year in Jalen Brunson. Negative 37. Fourth quarter point differential. And against the Pacers in this series, they were minus 18 in the turnover differential against Indiana and at a 118 defensive rating, which this year, it's 6-game sample size, but still this year would have qualified as the worst defensive rating in the NBA. Almost as if the guys were just absolutely exhausted. Could I make the case? Listen, we know Brunson's a ball-dominant player, so that factors in too. But I talked about pace, and that was the story of these Eastern Conference Finals. Could I make the case that a big reason the Knicks do play the way that they do, particularly come playoff time when they are so Brunson-reliant, is because they can't play another way because they're freaking spent? Because Tibbs is playing Josh Hart 45 minutes in a game against the Magic in March. And I'm not saying that actually happened, just throwing that out as an anecdote. That is the Tom Thibodeau way. So people might say I'm dancing around it. I'll address it straight on. The Knicks need to fire Tom Thibodeau. And if they don't fire Tom Thibodeau, get a good number 1 assistant just in case you have to. Do what the Denver Nuggets did. Clearly Denver, particularly after they made the Russell Westbrook move, were not loving the direction that the franchise was going in the direction of Michael Malone. It was a controversial firing talked about in the show. We all did. But they got David Adelman to make sure, okay, got our number 1 guy behind him, just in case if we fire Michael Malone with 3 games left of the regular season, Adelman's our guy. We trust him, and Adelman did a pretty good job. Took the Oklahoma City Thunder to a game 7 in the second round. Most of that is obviously the greatness of the best player in the world, Jokic, but Adelman had something to do with that. He didn't get overwhelmed in these series. So they're set. They got their coach. The Knicks need to do a similar thing. That is kind of the mold in today's NBA. Is these retread coaches bringing in Doc Rivers or Thibodeau or guys like that doesn't really work. It doesn't. Like, best assistant on a championship team. That's what the Cavs did in hiring Kenny Atkinson from the Golden State Warriors. That's how you build team. That's what the Utah Jazz did in hiring Hardy from the Celtics after they made the finals. That's the mold for building an NBA championship culture, hiring the elite assistants on these good teams. Once upon a time, Tom Thibodeau was that to Doc Rivers and the Celtics before the Bulls hired him. They got to conference finals. The Derrick Rose knee trouble obviously derailed most of that. Went to Minnesota, didn't really work. He's gone to the Knicks, and has been a great culture builder. But there are certain guys in the NBA and the NFL that are sort of, culture builders, but maybe can't quite get you to the next level. And I've labeled it as, and I feel bad for doing this because I love the guy, but as the Mark Jackson camp. And Mark Jackson, first of all, it's a crime that man's not on television anymore calling games. Mark Jackson was awesome calling games in the NBA with Van Gundy and Mike Breen, whatever. He should be on television. MSG Network, ESPN, one of these networks, get Mark Jackson. Point is, he should also be coaching. He turned around the Golden State Warriors franchise from a just joke, from in the state of California, Clippers North. That's what the Warriors were. With the help of Steph Curry and emerging Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Iguodala brought them to a 50, won a playoff series, came back, won 50 games, took the Lob City Clippers 7, and the Warriors had the foresight to say, he's a great coach. And by the way, there was some internal stuff in the organization as well. Let's not forget that. We can't get to the next level. We can't get to the level with next level. Mark Jackson, they hire Steve Kerr, and the rest is history. Steve Kerr is one of the 10 greatest coaches in NBA history, bar none. The Knicks need to make a similar call. Tibbs built the culture. Tibbs helped take the Knicks from literally the joke of the NBA to, holy crap, like I feel like most of the NBA media, myself included, picked the Knicks to beat the Pacers, picked the Knicks to go to the finals. If you're not going to fire Tibbs now, that's fine. If you don't want to shake up the locker room, I get it. You need to get a lead assistant. Good lead, like kind of what the Lakers did. The plan backfired because this coach ended up getting hired away from them to Dallas. But kind of what the Lakers did when Vogel was kind of on thin ice, or not on thin ice, this is actually when they hired Vogel. But Jason Kidd was his lead assistant. And they were felt like they were kind of grooming Kidd to be the coach, and then Kidd got hired away by the Mavericks, and I think has done a pretty good job there. That's the mold of how to build a good NBA team today. To get your team over the top to the very least today. And this banging your head against the wall of playing your starters 40 minutes in, I don't want to say meaningless regular season games, but meaningless regular season games, at least relative to these postseason games. We need guys with as much gas in the tank as possible. I mean, I've been enraged over the years at Gen Z Warriors fans on Twitter. For the record, I am a Gen Z Warriors fan on Twitter. And the point is that blow a gasket on Steve Kerr. Man, why is it Steph in the game to start the fourth quarter and we're down 2? Oh, I don't know. Play the long game so that Steph can play 44 minutes in big postseason games in April, May, and hopefully June. Crazy idea, I know. 14 years in as a head coach, Tibbs gone to 2 conference finals. And he's had good teams. Those Chicago teams, now, again, in fairness to Tibbs, some of that was the Derrick Rose injuries. But last year, I definitely thought they were better than Philly, and they beat Philly. I thought they were better than Indiana a year ago. If they'd have been healthy, frankly, I think they would have beaten the Pacers. Fell apart physically. Brunson, even in Game 7, Brunson got hurt in that game. So this style of basketball, this throw caution to the wind, minutes restrictions, all it doesn't matter. I think it's a poor way to run your operation. And so again, if you don't want to fire Tibbs, I get it. Get a great lead assistant to be his number 2. In case if you do fire Tibbs in January, February, we're good. We have a guy who can steady the ship, and we'll be just fine. So I don't think it's necessarily a personnel problem with the Knicks, because we weren't saying that when they were knocking out the defending champion Celtics. We weren't saying, do they have the pieces? They were the favorites in this series. Now, hindsight, they probably shouldn't have been, but they were. Get Brunson and Cat another season to work together. I think they work as a duo. Again, they got the Knicks further than the Knicks have been in a quarter century. Something's working. So there you go. That's where I'm at on the New York Knicks. Let's get to the comments. What do we got up in here in the comment section? Yeah, again, I shouted you out early in the show, Patrick. He said, I picked the Pacers to win the East and I was laughed at. Crazy as it sounded then, I ended up being right. And he said the Knicks have internal issues with Cat's defense. That report came out today. Yeah, there is that always happens when a team gets knocked out in the playoffs. Is then the dirty laundry gets aired once the season is over. So you're correct on that, Patrick. And he says, I have a gut feeling Michael Malone could be the next coach. Listen, it's being reported Tibbs is going to be retained. So that seems like if you had to bet in Vegas, Tibbs is the coach, Tibbs or the field, you probably bet Tibbs. But if they moved on, Michael Malone to me is the absolute worst option. It's not that Michael Malone's not a great coach. He won a championship 2 years ago. But he is sort of cut from that Tibbs mold where it's not even no BS, but it's kind of wears on guys after a while. Maybe isn't necessarily a long-term option at coach if you want to have sustained excellence as a basketball team. Oh, dang, Patrick. Doc Rivers is, man, I may use this. Doc Rivers is the Mike Tomlin of basketball, holding on to that one championship and still being considered a great coach. Well then, Mr. Patrick Brown may have stumbled onto something there. May use that moving forward. Let's just put it that way. This is why I love Patrick. He's a good guy, obviously, too. That's interesting. Patrick. Mark Jackson would be over the moon to be the head coach of New York. I'd love to see him get another chance to coach. And again, that's another guy that I don't think that would necessarily work for this situation. I definitely want to see Mark Jackson back in the NBA, whether as a color commentator or as a coach. Again, I think the Knicks do need a guy who understands NBA rotations. I mean, can we put out that graphic just one more time? The second graphic. Last in bench minutes per game, last in bench points per game. It's not going to work. It's just not. So that's where we're at with the Knicks right now. Again, I don't think it's panic mode. Knicks fans today seem to be pretty content, is the word I would use, satisfied with the results of this season. I mean, if you had told Knicks fan coming in, you got Bridges, got Cat, you were 2 wins away from the finals. Yeah, they'd take that. They'd probably take not the Knicks fans that are out in the streets of New York freaking throwing trash bags at Pacers. Not those clowns. I'm talking about reasonable, Knicks fans who know basketball. Those folks. I'm not going to lie to you, because we remember when the Eagles won the Super Bowl 3 months ago, and the city of Philadelphia looked about how we thought it would look after a championship celebration. It's on the board. New York would have not looked much different if the Knicks had pulled off the 3-1 comeback, certainly, and then if they'd upset Oklahoma City. Oh my gosh! I mean, just make Jalen Brunson mayor of New York. I mean, my goodness. So they'll be fine. I just think they need to make some changes, either at coach or assistant coach. All right, be back after the break, and I'm going to do a segment when we come back in just 1 minute that I don't think any sports show in America outside of Michigan is doing today. The Detroit Lions just lost their center to retirement, and I think it's kind of important. Tell you why after the break. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Excited that you guys would join us on this Monday, the week of the NBA Finals. I'll give you my finals prediction in about a half hour. I must admit, this topic is probably one that isn't being done on any show in America unless you're affiliated with the Detroit Lions or you're in the state of Michigan. But, and I wish, unfortunately, I'm using a different area of StreamYard to do the show. We do not have the you get a kneecap, you get a kneecap, you get a kneecap Oprah Winfrey / Dan Campbell collab video for this video, unfortunately. I still love me some Detroit Lions. I may be a Steelers fan, but the Lions are, of course, my second favorite team. I believe in that squad for some time now. But they were dealt a pretty tough blow today. So Frank Ragnow, who is their not Pro Bowl center, all-pro center, retired today at the age of, I think he's 29 years old after only, I shouldn't say only, he's had a nice career, 7 seasons in the NFL. It's pretty good, especially given what he accomplished. He basically put out a statement saying, my body just, I've tried to convince myself my body can be ready to go for this upcoming season. He's played through a bunch of injuries these last few years, and he just can't take it physically anymore. Totally understandable. And so he retires today. So just to solidify how big Frank Ragnow is to the Lions, we can show you the numbers right here. This guy's a monster. Okay, he's a 3-time All-Pro. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler. According to Pro Football Focus last year, he was the number 1 graded run-blocking center and the number 2 graded overall center to Creed Humphrey. Ragnow was in that discussion with Humphrey, with Cam Jurgens in Philadelphia, as like the premier centers in the NFL. Like, he was a part of what I believed as recently as 24 hours ago was the best offensive line in the league. Now at this point, I'm going to have to give that title to Philly, who was certainly nipping on the Lions' heels for a while now. Here's where I'm at on Detroit. So folks who may be new to the show, let me go through the story and do it as briefly as possible. So I was one of the many when the Lions hired Dan Campbell following the 2020 season. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's like nothing against this dude, but we're going to bite kneecaps and we're going to smile back at you. I'm like, the Lions need a lot of things. I don't know if this is necessarily it, but what Dan Campbell did, he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to institute a player arse-off culture. Simultaneously, we're going to be the toughest team in the league, maybe the best culture in the league in terms of just we are going to play till the final whistle, even when we win only 3 games in 2021. And I'm going to have the best staff in the NFL. I'm going to have Aaron Glenn run the defense. I'm going to have Ben Johnson run the offense. I talked all last season. The Lions have 3 head coaches in the roster. I said it all year. Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. Well, 2023 rolls around. I picked them. I feel like the only human being in the world that said, you know what? Not Philadelphia. Not a bunch of these teams that folks are high on coming into the 2023 season. The Detroit Lions will be in the NFC Championship game. Called that as recently as far back as April 2022 during the draft process. Son of a gun, they made it 9 months later. And so they lost San Francisco, blew a 17-win lead. The following season, I'm thinking, I feel good about my adopted team here, the Lions. I'm picking them to win the NFC, go to the Super Bowl. And after the regular season, I was feeling really good about that. 15 wins, beat the Vikings in the biggest game of the regular season, convincingly, I might add, in order to get the number 1 seed. The playoffs had to run through Detroit, and then Washington came in and smoked them. Jared Goff had his worst game of the year. Had, I think, 3 or 4 turnovers in that game. The Lions defense, which had struggled the second half of the year because of a litany of injuries. I said all of last season. There's next man up, but eventually you don't have any guys to bring up. And the Lions fell apart defensively and offensively. They were not quite the explosive team they could be in the regular season. I don't know what to do with this team now. So Philadelphia is rightfully so the favorites to win the NFC. They're the best roster in the NFL. After that, NFC North to me is the best division of football, so I'm still not entirely... I'm probably not going to pick Minnesota. I'll say that in the front end because I'm not a J.J. McCarthy believer. And I think the other 3 teams, yes, given the addition Chicago made to the offensive side of the ball, most notably at head coach and the belief I have in Caleb Williams, the defense that team had the last year, they can win the NFC North. And Jordan Love I saw some stuff on PFF that if you're a Packers fan, you should feel pretty good about. Jordan Love, some of these tight window throws. Jordan Love can take that next step. And where I'm at with Detroit, well, their defense, just by virtue of not getting hurt, should be significantly better next season, but Aaron Glenn's gone. Aaron Glenn's with the Jets now as their head coach. And the offensive side of the ball, you got Goff, Montgomery, my man, Jahmyr Gibbs, St. Brown, Laporta, who's hopefully going to be healthy this year. You got plenty of pieces. The problem is, up the middle of your line, they're going to try and insert. They drafted a guard in the second round. They're going to try and insert him. I think he played at Georgia. They're going to insert him at center this year. See if he can, sure that up. That's some big shoes to fill, filling in for, the second best center in the sport. Dan Campbell alluded to it after that NFC title game loss to the Niners. And this is true across sports, man. It's sort of, maybe he was almost like loosely quoting Eminem to a certain degree, right? From Detroit, most famous rapper, obviously from that city. Get one shot. Get one shot. And Dan Campbell said after that championship loss to the Niners, I told our guys in the locker room, we may not be back here. Like, that's just reality of the NFL. Sometimes you get your opportunity, you miss it, and that's it. They come back next season, win 15 games. Like, it was the perfect year for the Lions. One bad game, that was it. And folks may say, yeah, but it was just one bad game. Sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes that's the only opportunity you get. I thought last year's Lions team was even better than the Lions team previously, even despite the bad defense, because their offense was just so much more above everybody else. They fell apart in that game to Washington. So I'm not saying the Lions are just going to miss the playoffs. I don't believe that. They got too good of a roster offensively, and I like the pieces they got defensively. They brought in DJ Reed from the Jets. Like, they've got some nice players. Listen, if the Lions make the Super Bowl, I would be overjoyed at like that. That no NFC champion would make me happier than if Detroit wins that conference. For that fan base, for the city, all of it. I just don't see this team as having the upside as the last 2 years. Particularly last year. I just don't. So, and listen, I'm not saying they'll be bad. I may still very well pick them to win the NFC North. They're the Vegas favorite. They should be the Vegas favorite. But the Ragnow loss, again, probably the only show in the world doing this topic, it's bigger than you think. This might be their second best offensive lineman to Penei Sewell, their outstanding tackle. So there you go. That's where I'm at in Detroit. Patrick, Dan Campbell's culture turned around Detroit. It's worked, and they built a special locker room bond. It's going to be wide open to who will win the NFC North. It is. Again, folks are high on the Vikings. I get it. I'm not a buyer in JJ McCarthy. I'm just not. I wasn't a buyer when he was at Michigan. I think he was generally a product of Jim Harbaugh and that great running game and offensive line that the Wolverines had, backed up by a great defense. I mean, what was so funny about Michigan is, I think they only won 8 games last year if you include their bowl win over Alabama, but they were one of the most talented teams in college football last season, but their quarterback play was utterly atrocious. Now they have a really good quarterback coming in. But if you noticed during the draft, you had Will Johnson, you had Colston Loveland, Will Campbell obviously was the first Wolverine off the board, Mason Grant, you had some dogs in there from, so Will Campbell was LSU. I apologize. Will Campbell's from LSU. My bad. Forget that. I got him and Mason Graham mixed up. But Mason Graham, Will Johnson, Colston Loveland, that Michigan team was stacked in 2023. And you saw that in the following 2025, or I guess 2 drafts after that, 2025 draft. If they had a half-decent quarterback play last season, they beat Ohio State, beat Alabama. So there you go. Michigan's in good shape. There's no question about that. I'm just not a buyer in JJ McCarthy, though. Arm strength doesn't wow me. He's pretty athletic, but nothing crazy. I don't see him. The funny thing about Darnold last season, because it was the most shocking year that any quarterback, wasn't necessarily the best year, it was one of the best, but one of the most shocking season that any quarterback had last year. Talent was never an issue, or I should say upside was never an issue with Sam Darnold. He moves well. He's big. He's got a great arm. He improved his accuracy in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, those weapons, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones in the backfield. Great offensive line, even without the left tackle. But he can make, I remember there was a throw. It's the throw of Sam Darnold's career thus far. It was a throw down the left sideline into the game to beat the Seattle Seahawks to Justin Jefferson. I remember watching it, sat back. I was like, okay, this guy might actually be helping the system as opposed to just being a complete product of the system. I don't think JJ can make those throws. As talented as Minnesota is, as well coached as they are, as good of a draft as I think they had, as good of an offseason as I think they had. Maybe I'll be wrong. I'm not saying the Vikings can't be a playoff team. I just don't buy them as a contender. Whereas the Packers, I think, do have that upside. The Lions, even with their losses, do have that upside. Again, a lot of this is going to come down to what Ben Johnson's replacement does. Because to me, the Lions are going to have a better defense this year than what they had last year with, in all likelihood, a better DC in Aaron Glenn last year, just because they lost so many guys. Aiden Hutchinson, most notable. And then as for Chicago, they got Ben Johnson, who I'm a believer in. We got to see him coach, but I'm a believer in. Defense was good Defense was not the problem for the Bears a season ago. It was offensively, Caleb's development wasn't quite where he needed it to be. The accuracy wasn't great. O-line was god-awful, and the receivers weren't always on the same page, and the run game was atrocious. Colston Loveland, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, additions to the O-line, Joe Thuney. The Bears got something going on right here. I really like them as a potential playoff team in 2025. I really do. So there you go. That's the last NFL topic we'll do today. So shifting now back to the NBA, but not specifically to the finals or even the playoffs, but the end of an era. TNT, Turner, inside the NBA are no more. Inside the NBA will continue. I'll get to that in just a moment, in about 3 to 4 or 5 minutes or so, because I do think there's a little bit of an overreaction with the concern about inside the NBA going to ESPN. I'll touch on that. But it's the end of an era. Inside the NBA, over at TNT covering basketball. That's done. So, listen, with respect to ESPN, who, particularly when it comes to their broadcasts, I think do an unbelievable job. Mike Breen is my personal favorite basketball commentator going. Breen is awesome. And Doris, RJ, they do a great job as well. Mark Jackson, Jeff Van Gundy were great in the past as well. TNT was the gold standard, not just for basketball coverage, but for sports coverage. I think the NFL and Fox is a close second. I think just in terms of production, analysis, announcer, all of it, NFL and Fox is outstanding. Not quite NBA on TNT. Because what they did, better than most networks covering their sport are able to do. Not only did they cover the games, not only did they they brought the humor. The humor on the Inside the NBA was unique in large part just due to the camaraderie. Just because those guys, they're boys. Like they're tight. Shaq was the last edition all the way back in 2011. So that crew's been together for 14, 15 years. So that's just going to come that's going to come from just halfway liking each other over a period of time. And obviously those guys have become almost like brothers over the years. But almost incorporating the basketball culture into the games, covering that in a light where it was, you would see, rappers on Inside the NBA. You would see comedians, actors on Inside the NBA, interacting with former players, interacting with current players. They did that better than any other network has done covering their sport that I've seen. And so, and I'll get into Bryson's best 10 in a few minutes as it relates to my personal top 10 favorite TNT broadcasters doing the NBA all time. But I did want to briefly sort of touch on this. NBA and TNT is going to, not NBA and TNT. NBA is going to ESPN bonanza. Bill Simmons, shout out to the great Bill Simmons, the podcast, the podcast godfather as it relates to the NBA in many aspects. He was kind of the first to get the ball rolling on this. Like, man, not just with the quote unquote PC politically correct stuff that people love that Inside the NBA just did not incorporate at all into their show. But if you watch the production for ESPN's halftime pregame, it's like minute and a half segments, commercial break, 30-second commercial break. Like the analysts just don't have enough time to make good points because they're running against the break constantly. Whereas TNT, I'm not sure what means they were able to do this. That just wasn't a problem. But as far as the PC stuff that people are worried about, like, oh man, they're not going to let the guys say some of the stuff that they would say on TNT. Let's just put it this way. Let's just keep this simple. So take Ernie, Kenny, Shaq out of the picture. Do you really think ESPN is going to tell Charles Barkley what to and what not to say? And if that becomes an issue, I think ESPN is going to fire Charles Barkley. If that happened, Kenny, Shaq, and Ernie are gone. They are resigning from that show in protest in favor of Charles. Like that's not going to happen. So I do think there's a little bit of an overreaction on that front. Like, oh man, they may not let they built up enough equity with the audience and with ESPN and previously, obviously, with Turner. That's not going to be an issue. So I think for the NBA moving forward, or for ESPN moving forward, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Honest to God, I really, really do not. Is that the camaraderie, the equity that show is built with the audience, that's not going to be an issue. But it was sad, to see Kevin Harlan, Stan Van Gundy, Reggie Miller, Allie LaForce after the game sort of paying tribute to the network, the history of the network. And then obviously Inside the NBA, there's the hour show. And then there's at the very end, of course, Shaquille O'Neal. This is why we love Big Diesel. Swears live on air, when talking about, we're not coming to F around. We're kicking ass and taking names. Like, that's Shaq. And then Kenny kind of followed suit. Charles had a nice message afterwards. And then Ernie, the Godfather, the man, the myth, the legend, signed off in what was a truly heartfelt fashion. And in typical Ernie fashion, dropped the mic, and the other three hosts followed suit. And so it was a beautiful ending to the show. And so I thought the best way, I guess, that I could pay tribute, because we know that show is, from a production standpoint, from analysis standpoint, from a chemistry standpoint, that is the gold standard for sports television, podcast, anything, print. That is the standard. With respect to any other show, newspaper publication, any of it, that Inside the NBA is the standard. And so for a guy like me who's trying to, in my own way, follow in similar footsteps, I think the best way that I could pay tribute is by doing Bryson's Best 10, my top 10 moments on Inside the NBA, or moments on Inside the NBA, my top 10 broadcasters on TNT over the years. Go and get the background. Here we go. Broadcaster at TNT in their history. From the Lady Vols, Candace Parker. Candace Parker is the 10th best TNT broadcaster for the NBA. in history in my mind. Here's why. So obviously, again, I'll admit, bias comes into this, obviously in this list, but yes, Candace was a Lady Vol. Candace is the greatest Lady Vol of all time. I think her ability, not just to cover women's basketball, but I thought incredibly versatile commentator. She could be in the studio with the Tuesday Crew with Shaq, Dwayne Wade, then Jamal Crawford, and then Adam Lefkoe. And then she could also be covering the games live as a broadcaster, sometimes Kevin Harlan, sometimes Reggie Miller. She was, again, as versatile as they came, very, very knowledgeable about the game of basketball. Obviously, she's a multi-time MVP, multi-time champion. No surprise there. I thought Candace was excellent. I thought she was one of the better overall analysts that TNT Turner had. She does a great job, by the way, covering March Madness as well. So shout out to Candace. She is my 9th favorite NBA on TNT broadcaster of all time. At number 9, again, extra bias coming to this one, but I did think he was really, really good at his job. My man, the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is my 9th favorite TNT broadcaster of all time, and here's why. One could make the case. I Steve was the GM of the Suns for a while before he went back to TNT to be a color commentator for these games. One could argue that his job the job he did on TNT aided in part to him getting the Warriors job in 2014 after my Warriors fired Mark Jackson. He was very smart, obviously, as the, as Shaq would say, G14 classification, which is code for you got rings. Steve was a 5-time champion as a player, obviously, with the Bulls and with the Spurs. Very, very funny on air, charismatic. Like, you need these things to be successful in the sports broadcast industry. Charisma. Are you good on camera? Are you smart? Like, Steve had all of them, checked all the boxes, and obviously knew so much about the game. Warriors hired him, and he's become a head coach of a dynasty. One of the 10 greatest head coaches of all time, as far as I'm concerned. I thought he did a great job in TNT over the years. I did miss him, covering the conference finals, but I'm glad he's with my Warriors, obviously. Steve Kerr is my 9th favorite NBA on TNT broadcaster of all time. At number 8, don't skip the video. It's David Aldridge. Please don't skip this video, okay? That's a 2K joke, by the way. David Aldridge, my 8th favorite NBA on TNT broadcaster of all time. Was with the NBA on TNT for about 2 decades. I think he left like a few years ago. Has continued to have great success. He actually co-authored a book called the Basketball 100. I believe it was called the 100 Greatest Basketball Players of All Time. Couldn't recommend it more. Outstanding book right at the beginning of this year. It's a long one, but it's a really, really good book. Very smart, great interviews with the players. Cover the game in, I thought, again, he comes from kind of like the Michael Jordan 90s era, was kind of where he cut his teeth covering the league. But he's not one of those 1990s Jordan acolytes who thinks just no one can even shine this man's shoes. He appreciated the game for what it was then and what it is today. Is one of the best journalists in basketball going on right now, and did a great job in the NBA over the years. He's the top sideline reporter of all time, and is, as far as I'm concerned, for the history of that network. David Aldridge at number 8. Maybe a little bit of a controversial ranking at number 7. I love him to death nonetheless. At number 7, my 7th greatest NBA and TNT broadcaster of all time is Kenny the Jet Smith. Kenny Smith at number 7. I'm on my NBA on TNT all-time favorite broadcasters in history. Here's why. So, again, people may see Kenny at 7 as low. I just like some other guys a little bit higher than him. But Kenny was the second addition to the modern version of Inside the NBA. Obviously, Ernie was the OG. But Kenny arrived over 25 years ago after his great solid playing career. 2-time champion with the Rockets, slam dunk contest champion, I believe. Great shooter. Offer the analysis when Chuck and Shaq are offering are offering the jokes and whatnot. Ernie's going to try and keep the thing together as the host. Kenny was there to offer the analysis. He often got beat to the board on those races in studio. Kenny, your form, my man. Your form on those races, my man. He's got to be better moving forward on TNT. But shout out to Kenny Smith. A great career as a player. Outstanding career as a broadcaster. He's at number 7 on my NBA and TNT all-time favorite broadcaster list. At number 6, one could argue the most iconic voice in the NBA. If you're not Mike Breen, it is the great Marv Albert. Marv Albert, my 6th favorite NBA and TNT broadcaster of all time, and here's why. Yes, our iconic call from the great Marv Albert, who retired 4 seasons ago, announcing NBA basketball games. Again, like it's the simplest. That to me is what makes the greatest broadcasters, especially the play-by-play guys, the best. Is just the 1-word or 2-word catchphrases. Mike Breen has bang. Kevin Harlan says good. Marv Albert, yes. To me, one of the most underrated Marv Albert calls of all time was when Tracy McGrady had 13 points in 30 seconds or something crazy to beat the San Antonio Spurs. Great run by Tracy there. Marv Albert was on the call for that, called the conference finals every year for TNT for the last quarter century or so. Did a great job over the years. Obviously, he was the Knicks announcer. Cover a lot of finals that Michael Jordan was in the 90s for NBC. Marv Albert, all-time legend as a play-by-play man. He is at number 6 on my NBA on TNT all-time broadcaster list. At number 5, my second favorite basketball announcer of all time. It is my man, Kevin Harlan. Kevin Harlan, the 5th greatest NBA and TNT broadcaster of all time in my mind. And here is why. So, again, I already mentioned his iconic call of good earlier. He obviously called NBA games on 2K. So if you're playing 2K, I know Brian Anderson, who's shout out to Brian as well, does a great job, calls games on 2K as well. Kevin Harlan's the OG. Called dunk contests, conference finals. Again, we talk about versatility. He can do it all. He can make the most benign moment sound incredible. My favorite Kevin Harlan moments have to be, honestly, if a team is up by 25 points with a minute and a half to go in the fourth quarter and some bench warmers at the free throw line, and if he misses 2, the home crowd gets free Chick-fil-A or cookies, crumble cookies or whatever from whatever local city that it is in, and he just builds the anticipation for it. I think he was it Philadelphia where it was, I think, a Wendy's Frosty where the guy missed the second free throw and he said, "It's a Frosty for everyone." Outstanding broadcaster. Does a great job at the NFL as well. Glad to see that his career will continue beyond Turner covering the NBA. Kevin Harlan is my 5th favorite all-time broadcaster at the NBA on TNT. At number 4, God rest his soul, an all-time legend, Craig Sager. Craig Sager, my 4th favorite all-time NBA and TNT broadcaster. He is the 4th greatest broadcaster in my mind in the history of the NBA and TNT. Who can forget those very colorful suits, ties? Again, he seemed to be a measured guy in terms of his demeanor, but his suit said otherwise. I remember one time years ago, he got ripped by Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett told him, "Burn your suit, dude. Like, this is not working." But Craig Sager was, by all accounts, an incredible man, fought valiantly in his battle against cancer, which obviously he passed away about 9 years ago in 2016. Thank God the NBA on ABC gave him the opportunity to cover the finals, that classic Warriors-Cavs series in 2016. He covered Game 6, gave him the opportunity to do so. He had never done a finals game to that point, but he was great. He brought the love, the laughter on TNT over the years, and I accidentally mentioned that David Aldridge is my favorite silent reporter on the NBA and TNT. My bad, I lied. It is definitely Craig Sager, all-time legend. May he rest in peace. We will never forget him. Craig Sager, my 4th favorite all-time NBA on TNT broadcaster of all time. At number 3, the Diesel, Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq is my 3rd favorite all-time NBA on TNT broadcaster, and here is why. I mean, where to begin? So he joined the show. He was the last addition to the modern Inside the NBA on TNT crew. He joined after he retired in 2011. And it's funny, you watch some of these documentaries or behind the scenes about the show, talking about how it's kind of like a clunky fit at first because Ernie, Kenny, and Charles were so used to each other, and there's the 3 of them, and it worked, and they'd have other guys, Chris Webber, Magic Johnson, come in. But Shaq brought that new dynamic. Shaq is obviously had the most recent career of anybody on that desk, and the battles with Charles and the Google me, Chuck, I got 4, you ain't got no rings, Chuck. My favorite Shaq by far all-time moment on TNT has to be the hot chip challenge. I think this was like 2017 when it was like the spicy chip challenge, whatever that was going around on social media at the time. And he bites it. He's trying to keep the straight face. "It's nothing to me." And just tries to keep the straight face. And then he absolutely breaks. "Anybody got some milk?" Shaq's one of the greatest broadcasters in the history of American sports television because he brings the fun, he brings the laughter, he brings some great analysis some days, some awful analysis others, but nonetheless, the man with G14 classification who had been in that club, Shaquille O'Neal, my second favorite broadcaster, third favorite, broadcaster in the history of the NBA on TNT. At number 2, it is a sparring partner, Charles Barkley. Chuck is my second all-time NBA on TNT broadcaster of all time. I mean, do I need to tell you why? I mean, this is a guy who, again, we talk about Shaq, where sometimes the analysis is actually really, really good, and sometimes you're kind of left, like, scratch your head a little bit. Jump shooting teams don't win championships. Us Warriors fans we didn't forget that one, Chuck. But nonetheless, again, he was the guy who took Inside the NBA to the next level. Like, it was obviously a good show with Ernie and Kenny. Once Chuck joined the show around the year 2000 after he had retired, whole different show. Could laugh at himself, could make fun of himself, whether it was the no rings thing, whether it was the iconic moment where he's reading the teleprompter and then it's flashed across the screen, I'm a dumbass, and he reads it. Like, it's Chuck can laugh at himself. Chuck's hilarious. And again, like I said earlier in the show, anybody that's worried about, whether the show will be the same as what it was on Turner as what it's going to be now on ESPN, I will again repeat, do you really think Inside the NBA on ESPN is going to tell Charles Barkley, of all people, what to say, what not to say? No, I don't think Chuck's going to be worried about that. I don't think the execs at ESPN need to be worried about that at all. He's towed the line over the years. Ask the city of San Antonio. Nonetheless, Chuck, shout out to him. My second favorite all-time NBA on TNT broadcaster. And that leaves one man and one man only. The Godfather, the man, the myth, and the legend himself, Ernie Johnson, as my top all-time NBA on TNT broadcaster. And here's why. Well, he was there from the jump all the way to the very end. From 1989, unsullied by sponsorship, of course, all the way to 2025. This is a guy who is the consummate professional as it pertains to not just sports broadcasters, but broadcasters in general. I don't think people understand. I host a show. I host the 8 o'clock spot, which will have a new episode tomorrow night, by the way, on Tuesday nights. Game show, it's a blast, all of it. I don't think people understand how difficult is to keep the show flowing, make sure everybody gets their points in. Maybe you throw something in, keep it flowing in a timely fashion. There's not a human being alive that does it as well as Ernie has done over the course of his career in television, at the NBA on TNT over the years, and now, of course, with ESPN. Not to mention, of course, he is never met the man. From what I've observed from afar, seems to be about as decent and as inherently good of a human being as you will ever meet. We understand the story of him and his wife, his lovely wife, adopting a child overseas who dealt with some difficult medical issues throughout his life. Michael Johnson, I believe, was his name, who passed away a few years ago. Ernie is the consummate professional at every single thing that he does in life. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, runaway, with respect to everybody else on the list, the greatest NBA on TNT broadcaster of all time. Before I check the comments, if you're just joining the show, I just ranked my top 10 NBA and TNT broadcasters ever for Bryce's best 10. Go back over the list. At number 10, Candace Parker. At number 9, Steve Kerr. Number 8, David Aldridge. Please don't skip. Number 7, Kenny the Jet Smith. Number 6, Marv Albert. Number 5, Kevin Harlan. Number 4, Craig Sager. Number 3, Shaquille O'Neal. Number 2, Charles Barkley. And number 1, Ernie Johnson. Let's go to the comments now. Patrick. Chuck's rant on San Antonio women. Oh my gosh. He even did something like that recently. Didn't he do the whole there's some big old women thing? Yeah, didn't he do that recently? I think this season. Actually, I think they did a segment where the women from San Antonio clowned him. That was always a blast. The churros. Oh my gosh. Then years later, remember he said, I gotta apologize to the women of San Antonio. I had churros last night. There's only one Charles Barkley. Patrick, Charles, you're 6-12 in closeout games. Shaq and 4 rings. Yep. And Charles always mentioned the fact, I think Shaq's been swept more times than any player in NBA history, which is kind of a wild stat. And Shaq, of course, always retorts to this. Still got 4 more rings than you, Chuck. Oh, classic moment. Thank you, Patrick. One of the funniest moments. Chuck and Shaq laughing at the police presence during the hostile situation between the Houston Rockets and the LA Clippers. That was the greatest Chuck and Shaq moment of all time by far. For those that don't know the story, this was 17-18 season. This was Chris Paul's return to LA as a member of the Rockets. He played for the Clippers for 5-6 years. Was with the Rockets now. Played his first game. Was on TNT. And no love lost. He had problems with his old teammate Blake Griffin. And I don't know if it was the Clippers who went in the Rockets locker room. I think it was actually the Rockets who went in the Clippers locker room. And Roz Goldenwood, who's a great reporter for the Warriors over the years, and then went to TNT. I think she's at ESPN now. Was reporting it, and Charles and Shaq were just could not keep it together. It was a hilarious moment. And yeah, nothing like that show. Like I said, anyone worrying about, ESPN's going to censor them. Yeah, you're going to censor Charles Barkley. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Heck, censoring Shaq is kind of difficult. Charles? Nah, that show's still going to be great. No question about it. And by the way, they still have the same producers, Underdog, put that on a t-shirt. They got everybody. So I think that show's going to continue in a great way. All right, be back after a 1-minute break. Top of the hour, my NBA Finals prediction for 2025 after the break. Welcome back to Carving It Up Live. So before we get to my finals prediction, as we were just talking about, this came in from Awful Announcing from Michael McCarthy at Front Office Sports, that referring to Inside the NBA on ESPN, that there will be he emphasized there will be an extensive post-game show, say sources. ESPN's goal is to let the post-game segment run as long as it does now on TNT. So there you go. Again, same producers for TNT. You have to imagine, obviously, some negotiating with ESPN, and the fact that they want the show to remain the same. It's the same show. Literally, the only difference is it's a different network. And so you have that. Also, Tom Pelissero reported that the deal has been finalized, that the Eagles have now agreed to send Bryce Huff, who's a defensive end, to the San Francisco 49ers for a 2026 mid-round pick pending a physical. So Bryce Huff was a really good pass rusher for Philadelphia. I obviously wasn't planning to do much on that. I didn't do the research ahead of time, but he had a good season with Philadelphia. They've had a great D-line over the years. And so is San Francisco, by the way. The Niners and Eagles have just stacked great defensive lines for the last decade, it feels like, particularly in the draft. But now San Francisco taking a pass rusher off of Philly's hands. And I'll tell you, that's the only big concern I have about the Eagles coming into the season, is that defense has lost a lot of pieces. Offensively, they're still stacked. Saquon Barkley was just today named as the Madden 26 cover. Not surprising at all. It's Madden 26, Saquon Barkley's number. Saquon was, start to finish, probably the best player in football last season. Offensive Player of the Year, all of these. You still got A.J. Brown, you still got Devontae Smith, Goddard. Jalen Hurts had the best postseason, certainly, of his career. Super Bowl MVP. Got to see him in Disney World. That was pretty cool. So shout out to Jalen Hurts. And that's my big concern, I think, for Philadelphia moving forward. They're going to be a great team. They're probably going to win the NFC East. Washington will give them a run. But defensively, will they take a step back? That's going to be the big question for Philadelphia. NBA Finals are going to tip off on Thursday night. Indiana Pacers out of the East. The Oklahoma City Thunder out of the Western Conference. We'll get our background music. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the more intense background music of the show. I apologize for that. But nonetheless, my finals prediction. 2025, Pacers out of the East, Thunder out of the West. So Oklahoma City is favored to win this series. We'll do more of like a game-by-game prediction on our pregame shows, which are going to start on Thursday night, so stay tuned for that. But do more sort of game-by-game predictions from there. As for the breadth of the series, first of all, those that are saying, oh, man, it's there's no aura in this series. The folks that are, I guess, relying on social media memes for their NBA coverage. This doesn't have the star power. Maybe it doesn't have the star power, but as we say in sports, the old saying goes in sports: styles make fights. We could show you the numbers right here. You've got the best offense in the league against the best defense in the league. Show you the numbers right here. So the Thunder defense versus the Pacers offense. First in field goal percentage. The Pacers are first in three-point percentage. The Thunder are second in three-point percentage in terms of defending it. Pacers are first in assists per game, so are the Thunder. Pacers are only second in turnovers per game, second best rather in terms of turnovers per game. Thunder are first at turning the basketball over, turning the other team over. On the other side, Pacers, number one offensive rating. Thunder, first in defensive rating. So again, at the end of the day, this is going to be a much closer series than people give it credit for. The thing that I'm looking for throughout the course of the series, because it was the story of the Eastern Conference Finals, I think in some part, not in big part, but in some part, the Pacers were able to dictate the pace because the Knicks were exhausted. We did a segment on that earlier in the show. Tibbs has got to start relying on his bench at some point. Like, I don't anticipate that's going to change anytime soon. Brunson was gas, Hart, Cat, everybody. But that's what the Pacers do. That's what they did to Milwaukee in the first round, Cleveland second round, and particularly the New York Knicks in the conference finals. The Denver Nuggets this season were number one in fast break points this season. Why do I bring that up? Who took Oklahoma City the deepest this season in the playoffs? It was the Denver Nuggets. Took them to a seventh game. Had them down 2-1. Now, a lot of that is Jokic is awesome and is, by a comfortable margin, the best player in the world. Like, respect to SGA, Giannis as well. They are not as good as Jokic right now. In 2025, June 2nd, they are not as good as Nikola Jokic. But Jokic did not have his best conference semifinals against Oklahoma City. He had a bad game 4, game 2. He had some rough moments throughout the course of that series. But getting out in transition, getting easy baskets, that's the Pacers' bread and butter. With Obi Toppin, with obviously Haliburton controlling everything. Siakam gets a lot of his buckets in transition. Andrew Nembhard, all of these guys, that's their bread and butter. And so that's going to be kind of the thing that I'm looking for is I think Oklahoma City's going to have a game plan to stop it. How then will the Pacers be able to adjust to that? The other aspect of it is second best player in the Pacers, Pascal Siakam. He's a champion. He won 6 years ago, 2019, Raptors against my Warriors and had a really, really good finals. The head coach of the Pacers, Rick Carlisle, 14 years ago, it was a ways back, but he was the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks when they upset the Miami Heat in the 2011 finals. So there is, I do feel like, a little bit of a Mavs Heat sort of feel to it, where Miami's clearly the more talented roster, but the way Dallas plays, the road Dallas took to get to the finals. Brandon Roy and the Portland Trailblazers, Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol and the Lakers, KD, Russ, and Harden and the Thunder. Then you get to Miami, battle-tested. We've been there. We've seen some of the best. We're ready to go. Now Oklahoma City can say, okay, we made quick work of Memphis, but we looked the best player in the world eye to eye and took them out in 7 games despite being down 2-1 on the road at Denver. We saw an Anthony Edwards who has kind of made a reputation of knocking out great players. Didn't blink. Now, again, I think Oklahoma City was a significantly better basketball team than Minnesota. Nonetheless, that was never a close series. There was never a moment you thought, hey, Minnesota. No, not a moment. Not even in game 4. And so both teams are battle-tested. Both teams are ready to go. In game 1, the Thunder are 9.5-point favorites. Again, we'll see where that line shifts as we get closer to game 1 on Thursday night in Oklahoma City. I'll sort of give takes on how I see that. Here's what I think it comes down to. The way that the Indiana Pacers play basketball is more conducive to winning in the NBA. Look at history. At least more so than Oklahoma City, in the sense that ball-dominant guys typically don't lead their teams to championships. Historically, generally, that is the case. Even the great players. Steph Curry is part of a run and gun, move the basketball, high pick and roll system. Like that's, and not even high pick and roll, they actually only started doing that. But we're going to move the basketball, play small ball, bam, bam, get out in transition, run to the three-point line, all of it. Michael Jordan, many of the people's eyes, the greatest player of all time. Scored a lot of points, won MVPs, DPO-wise, all of it. Did not win. People say, oh, he didn't win anything until Scottie. Yes and no. Because once Scottie went there, yeah, they were getting to conference finals and losing to the Detroit Pistons. But when Phil Jackson took over, in the early nights, when Phil Jackson took over, Tex Winter, Triangle, finally convincing Michael Jordan, hey, you don't have to do everything. You can still get your 30. We can move the basketball. We've got Scottie. We've got shooters. We've got a good third option, Horace Grant or Tony Kukoc down the road. That's how championships are won by and large in the NBA. Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, this is when James Harden was at the peak of his powers. And there are some similarities. Some people compare SGA to Harden. SGA is a significantly better postseason player than Harden, but in terms of the drawing contact in unorthodox ways, they're very similar. Kobe Bryant once lectured Harden years ago that, man, you can try the ISO ball. I never won a championship that way. I was still great, particularly in the second and third of the three-peat with Shaq. I was a great player, but obviously a big man next to you, but we had shooters around us. We had great wing defenders. We were a team. Same thing with the 09 and 2010 Lakers. What was the most iconic play after that first three-peat? What was the most iconic play of Kobe Bryant's career in the NBA Finals? I would argue it was not a shot he made, nor even a shot he attempted. It was a pass to Ron Artest to hit the dagger three in Game 7 against the Boston Celtics. Getting other guys involved. That's the way the Pacers play. But if you notice, the comps I just gave Indiana all have, no doubt, don't even think twice, all-time legends. Jordan, Kobe, Steph. I love Tyrese Haliburton. He is shutting up a lot of people these playoffs. And there's no telling what he can do in the future. But a lot of times in these finals, even if you do play the right way, at least the way I personally, the right way of playing basketball. 2 minutes to go, ball's in his hands. You're controlling everything. We need you to get a couple buckets, maybe get another guy involved, get a Siakam, get a Nembhard, get an Obi Toppin involved, lob to Miles Turner. I trust SGA more in those spots. Just not even from a Haliburton can't do it, but a SGA's better at it and is used to doing it type of situation. Not to mention, again, the length I think will bother Indiana that Oklahoma City brings to the table. So I will take the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the 2025 NBA Finals. They will do so in 6 games. This will not be the quick series that folks think it will be. Styles make fights. Best offense in basketball, best defense in basketball. Both will have their moments. So, and the fact the Pacers like to push in transition plays in their favor because the Thunder struggled at times with a team that likes to push in transition in Denver. So I'm going to take the Pacers. I'm sorry, my bad. I'm going to take the Thunder in 6 games over Indiana. And obviously, assuming they win, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will be the Finals MVP. And he'll be the first guy to be regular season MVP and Finals MVP since one of the greatest individual seasons of all time, 2013, LeBron James. So that is my prediction for the 2025 NBA Finals. So listen, I get it. It's not the sexy series. It's not the one that we were dying to see when the NBA season started. A lot of people thought Boston. After the Luka trade, there was a lot of folks thought the Lakers could win the West. The Warriors, I think, would have won the West if Steph Curry hadn't gotten injured, but we'll never know. We will never know that. Indiana, OKC, small markets. Thunder have never won a title. The Seattle Supersonics title, that belongs to Seattle. Okay, if the Thunder win, this is Oklahoma City's title. Seattle should at least get to keep their championship, for crying out loud. And the Indiana Pacers, of course, have never won a championship, despite the fact that Indiana, as Carlisle and all the Pacers talked about after the game, in 49 states, it's just basketball. Indiana, in many ways, likes to view themselves, and understandably so, as kind of the mecca for the game of basketball itself. This will be a fun finals. I'll admit 2 things, then we'll get out of here. I feel pretty confident about my pick, but given my history predicting the finals, which dates back to 2015, it's not great. So much so, the only finals I've gotten correct in my life were, series that my Golden State Warriors played in. So basically, all 4 of the championships the Warriors won during their dynasty, obviously as a Warriors fan, I picked them in all 4 of them. The rest, I still don't know why I picked Miami to beat LA. Some of that was just personal hatred for the Lakers. I'll admit that played a factor. Miami over Denver was a reasonable pick just because Miami had gone through the gauntlet to get to Denver. And speaking of which, this is the last point. Last two finals have been absolute duds. Denver, Miami, there was a game 2, and then that closeout game 5 in Denver were good games. That was not a competitive series throughout. There's a reason it was a gentleman's sweep on the part of the Nuggets. And then last year was just about as bad a series, of a finals as I've ever witnessed. Not in the fact that Boston won it, in the fact that, game 3 was pseudo-close, but Luka fouled out. Tatum wasn't even great over the breadth of the series. It was not a fun finals to watch. That and the Celtics' only offense is to shoot a gazillion threes, and they were falling in those finals, I'll say that. So I think this will be a better series. Oklahoma City in 6 games in 2025. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live, not on Wednesday, on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Reason we're doing it on Thursday, it's the eve of the NBA Finals, or the day of the NBA Finals, rather. So give predictions for Game 1, do some breakdowns throughout. See if we can maybe get a guest. I like to get guests on throughout Super Bowls and finals just to get some more perspective throughout these big games or series. And so stay tuned for that. Thursday night, not Wednesday night, Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. Tune in for that. A preamble to Game 1 of the 2025 Finals. Get to that. Then, everybody have a great week. We'll see everybody on Thursday. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. I wouldn't mind if Indiana won. I'll just say that. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.